West Yorkshire Police Constable's misconduct hearing for asking a woman to find a friend from an abattoir. UK blamed for the death of a 16-year-old migrant who was found on a French beach. And who wasn't 16? Interesting. The Welsh NHS is under fire as one elderly man lays in the road for more than 2 hours waiting for an ambulance, and a drug addict dies in hospital but is only found 2 days later. A doctor who beat, ridiculed and belittled his wife is allowed to go back to treating patients because he felt left out of the clap for carers. This and more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And of course, if you do appreciate the work I do and understand that these topics often result in little to no YouTube monetisation, please consider joining the channel Patreon for as little as just £3 per month to help me continue providing this content. Hello ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies and my good friends the in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It is Friday, 21st of August 2020. Hope not hate. Now, I know for a fact the views on this organisation are either one end of the spectrum or the other. There's literally no one that I've ever seen or read about whose views are anywhere in the middle. So I'm sure there's going to be a vast array of opinions in the comments. However, research done by Hope Not Hate carried out in a survey between the 3rd and 10th of July while the anti-racism protests were flaring up in the UK, which seemed to suggest that 4 out of 5 respondents of black or Bangladeshi heritage felt there was bias in the UK police force against them. However, according to the report, 64% of people in the ethnic minority community in Britain believe that the police as a whole were good and that any issues were down to a few individuals within police forces, whereas black communities were slightly lower, 58%, but still a majority of the black community. 3/4 of black people, 71% of Bangladeshi people and 53% of Indian respondents feel that they are dealt with more severely in the courts. Now these numbers are pretty high and could well make people think that the bias is more severe, and sentences in courts is a major issue for the minority of black communities. But let me ask you a quick question. When you watch adverts that say in the small print on the screen that, for example, 53% agree, 17 people surveyed, do you think these huge companies are only surveying 17 people? Or do you actually realise that they're probably surveying thousands, if not tens of thousands, but need to pick a number which gives them the highest percentage? I could easily tailor a set of questions and go and target the people I know will generally agree with my questions in order to ensure the figures reflect what I want them to. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting that those from the BAME communities don't feel that they get treated badly, worse than us honkies, but what I am saying is that if you tailor a survey and ask the right people, you'll get the response you need, especially when you only ask 1,000 people, during a time when tensions are high, which is exactly what Hope Not Hate have done. In fact, I find it highly unlikely that only 1,000 people were asked to complete the survey. The National Police Chief Council said it was working to address racial inequalities in policing, saying that it was crucial to retain the trust of all communities so that we can work with them to fight crime and keep people safe. They added, "We have recently invested significant time and resources into working out how we can better engage with communities of all backgrounds." The National Police Chief Council and the College of Policing are developing a plan of action to address racial inequalities in policing. Detective Inspector Andy George, interim president of the National Black Police Association, has welcomed the results of the survey, which he said confirmed their concerns around trust and confidence in UK policing. He said, "Now is a time to acknowledge the evidence produced in this report and build long-term strategies to increase trust and confidence." But Andy, what evidence? This is just 1,000 people asked during a time of heightened tensions between BAME and police. And that's just 0.0015% of the entire UK population and just 0.01% of the entire non-white British population. Are we really going to use such a small and biased, because of the timing, survey on what people think of the police behaviour towards the BAME community? Personally, I think that any police mistreating a member of the public, any member of the public, is wrong. And I pretty much guarantee that if you ask 1,000 white folk if they think they've been unfairly treated by the police, you'll also get a high number. I'm not dismissing the feelings of the BAME community here, by the way. I'm simply trying to be logical and honest. I think that there are people from all backgrounds that have beef with the police because of how they've been treated, but This is a multicultural issue, not just a BAME issue, and we should be working together, not separating ourselves further from one another by making it about race. Labour MP Dr Razina Alin Khan, quoted in a report, said BAME communities had been treated as cannon fodder in the war against coronavirus, adding these people's lives are not and should not have been dispensable. The Hope Not Hate report also noted that more than half of respondents said they have witnessed or experienced racist comments being made in public, racism on social media, racism in the press or racial abuse in the past 12 months. And while I get that some people are genuinely discriminative, a lot of this has been simply because people have been hypersensitive recently and taking comments or reports the wrong way. Almost 3/4, 73%, said they supported the recent Black Lives Matter protests, but there were fears that they might prompt a backlash from sections of the white population, which personally, in my own opinion, is a bit of a joke, as it was generally the Black Lives Matter protesters who backlashed against the white community for holding their own protests, which, although some were done to cause issues specifically, many were simply done to protect statues, monuments and cenotaphs, while sharing their own message that they believed all lives matter, which is their right to do, just as it was the BLM movement's right to say that Black Lives Matter. You can't only allow your opinions to be heard and others not. About the same proportion, 72% agreed that Black history, including topics such as migration, belonging and empire, should be compulsory in schools. And this I don't disagree with. All history is important and should cover all aspects of our past because that's the only way to truly learn from mistakes. 48% said public figures could be admired for their achievements, even if they were held racist views, with a quarter disagreeing with that. Now, people can be admired for what they have achieved, if what they've achieved have benefited all people. I'm not much of a history buff, but Edward Colston, for example, I believe contributed to the building of education establishments and hospitals, which serves all members of the communities. Some 65% felt statues of slave traders should be removed from public squares and put into museums, which I will say is far better than simply destroying them or trying to erase them from history entirely. And there was also strong support for calls that the government should pay reparations to the descendants of black slaves. Now this I simply don't get. Nobody around today can be held responsible or accountable for what happened 100 years ago. No one. No one should be made to pay for the mistakes of their ancestors. That's not how justice works, unfortunately. How would you like it if your great-granddaddy killed someone in a war and now you have to give their family money for it? It's utterly ridiculous. Derbyshire Police Constable PC 14308 Mark Knights has appeared at Southern Derbyshire Magistrates Court to answer allegations that he attacked a local businessman in Ambergate whilst on duty in November 2019. Knights pleaded not guilty to the charges, of course, and the hearing will now be passed to Crown Court for a trial to be held on December the 3rd. Knights was granted unconditional bail until his trial date. Derbyshire Police confirmed that Knights was undertaking other duties away from frontline policing while the case was ongoing. So basically still employed and still working. We love West Yorkshire Police on this channel. They always seem to keep giving content. PC Darren Booth of West Yorkshire Police is to face a misconduct hearing over allegations of misconduct for making inappropriate, indecent comments. Whilst on duty with a colleague, PC Booth attended an incident of antisocial disorder. While speaking to a woman at the scene, PC Booth made the inappropriate, indecent comments, propositioning her for a bunk-up, suggesting that she find a third person for an agitatoire and arranging to meet her after his shift. The woman later called West Yorkshire Police and reported the conversation. She then requested that police be at her address when PC Booth attended later that evening. West Midlands Police said PC Booth finished his shift and drove to Glasshorton and met with Miss A as arranged. He then went to her home address where it is alleged that he made further inappropriate sexual comments and asked Miss A for a kiss. Pursuant to Miss A's earlier telephone call, police officers attended the address shortly afterwards and escorted PC Booth out of the property. The misconduct hearing is due to be heard on August the 24th to the 27th. But wasn't it nice of them to turn up after the fact, when anything could have happened to the woman in the meantime? But I suppose the mantra these days is better late than never. Blame has been placed on the UK by a French politician over the supposed death of a 16-year-old migrant who was found dead on a French beach, accusing the UK of lacking an ounce of humanity. Do these people realise just how many we've taken in by our inhumane country, while the French are doing all they can to help them get out of their country? The man who was found dead is said to be Sudanese, and Pierre-Henri said the death was caused by Britain's refusal to allow asylum claims to be made outside the UK. He asked how many more tragedies does it need for the British to find an ounce of humanity? You cheeky French bastard. It comes as Dan O'Mahony, the Home Office's newly appointed clandestine Channel Threat Commander, is expected to return to France on Thursday to continue discussions with officials in Paris and Calais in a bid to tackle the crisis. French authorities were said to have launched a search and rescue effort after another migrant suffering from hypothermia said his makeshift boat has capsized at sea and his companion, who could not swim, was missing and may still be in the water. Mr Dumont, who represents the northern region of Pas-de-Calais, said in a post on Twitter discussing the incident, "What we all feared happened that night. How many more tragedies does it need for the British to find an ounce of humanity?" Well, here's an idea for you. Stop helping them into the water on dangerous rafts then. Come on, let's think about what's causing the problem rather than the problem of what's happening after you could have stopped them in the first place. He said channel crossings had been increasing in recent weeks and claimed the migrants in Calais do not want to seek asylum in France, but they refuse state support, preferring to risk their lives in rafts. Now, they might not want it, but such is life. There's a lot of things in this world we don't want, but have forced upon us anyway by our respective governments. So if they are prevented from crossing the channel, then they will have to make do and integrate into France till they do their asylum request properly. Home Secretary Priti Patel, who had pledged to make the route unviable, said the death was an upsetting and tragic loss of young life. She said this horrendous incident serves as a brutal reminder of the abhorrent criminal gangs and people smugglers who exploit vulnerable people. Now, what's interesting about this is that most outlets and the government officials are pushing this fact that the lad was 16. Of course, you no doubt feel far more compassion for a young boy than someone of, say, nearly 30. Well, isn't it odd how very few people have mentioned the fact that although they were told he was 16 by another boy who was said to have been with him, he was in fact carrying travel documents which gave his name as Abdul Fattah Hamdallah and his age as 28. Philip Sabatier, Boulogne-sur-Mer's deputy public prosecutor, said, "I don't know if he had applied for asylum with British authorities, but he appears to have done so with the French authorities." So he had already applied for asylum in France, although the French MP Pierre-Henri said that the migrants don't want to stay in France. All seems a bit of a BS story to me. Hamdallah's friend, who told authorities that Hamdallah was just 16, managed to reach the shore, suffering from hypothermia, and alerted authorities shortly after 1 a.m. on Wednesday. So, what is this? The authorities having a wall pulled over their eyes and not doing their job to investigate who the person is properly? Or is it the government making purposely deceitful claims to make the public feel sorry for the so-called asylum seekers with blatant lies? The Welsh Ambulance service is under fire as reports of an elderly man in his 80s was left laying on a street for more than 2 hours after collapsing at Morrison's in Rhyl. The man had been spotted by passers-by lying in the road at around 9 p.m. Tuesday night, and an ambulance was called. Locals came out to help the man out of the road and onto the pavement, where they tried to make him comfortable with blankets and a pillow, with one woman who came to his aid stating that he had been on the floor for over an hour by the time she had got there at around 10 p.m. She said there was about 9 people around him and nothing turned up, so we called again and again, until, in desperation, the police were called. The police said it was a medical issue. The ambulance didn't arrive until 11:20 p.m, which is appalling, I think, as this poor man had numerous health problems and had been laying on a pavement for 2.5 hours. After the ambulance failed to turn up, locals said they were more than willing to take the elderly man to hospital themselves, but were told to leave the man and not move him by the 999 call handler. Lee Brooks, the Director of Operations at the Welsh Ambulance Service, said, "We were very sorry to hear about the patient's experience and would like to extend our apologies for his wait for help. At the time of his call, all of our resources were committed to other patients, either in the community or at hospital emergency departments. At least we know they weren't doing TikTok videos." He said, "Our services are currently in high demand. Last Wednesday was our busiest day of 2020, second only to New Year's Day. The Welsh Ambulance Service and its NHS Wales partners remain committed to delivering the best service possible through the COVID-19 pandemic, and we would invite the patient or a representative to contact us directly so that we can better understand his experience." Whatever happened to first responders scheme? I mean, that was specifically for situations such as this. Sticking with the NHS and with Wales now, there's an inquest into the death of 52-year-old Rory McLeod. The inquest into the death of 52-year-old Rory McLeod, who was found dead in a hospital shower block 2 days after he was reported missing, after being admitted to the Royal Gwent Hospital in Newport. After being found laying on 2 used syringes, an inquest on Thursday the 20th of August found that Mr McLeod had died from a combination of a build-up of fat on his liver and a heroin overdose. Mr McLeod had been admitted to the hospital on March 31st after suffering seizures linked to alcohol misuse, and in the week before he went missing, instructions were given to call the police if he attempted to leave the site, as doctors had assessed Mr McLeod as not having capacity to discharge himself after it was discovered he had been leaving the hospital to take spice. However, the coroner's court in Newport heard that by the time he went missing, the order to inform the police was no longer in place after he began displaying what they called insight into improvements needed. Police were told Mr McLeod had absconded from the ward on April the 11th, and a search of hospital grounds and the nearby area was conducted, whilst his family also checked spots he was known to frequent. The following day, a cleaner who was attending to the shower cubicles thought one was in use when she was unable to open the door. She raised the alarm when she returned the following morning and found it was still locked. Mr McLeod's body, partially undressed and sprawled on the floor, with a cut to his head while laying on top of the 2 syringes. CCTV images showed he had left the hospital twice during the morning of April 11th, first at 3:30am and returning at 4:04, and again at 5:34am and returning at 5:40, but it was not known when he entered the showers. Although I'm not sure why they didn't check the CCTV when they realised he was missing earlier, rather than waiting until he turned up. Assistant Coroner for Gwent said Mr McLeod had a clear understanding of his illness and why he was in hospital at the time he went missing. She said, "I accept the opinion at this time of his disappearance. He had capacity and insight into any actions that he took. The investigation found that the staff took appropriate action." She recorded a medical cause of death of drug toxicity, a fatty liver and coronary artery disease. Look out, folks. If you see a couple with a taser, you might like to know that they may have been taught to use it via virtual reality. You might think this is a great idea, but how can you train someone to use a potentially lethal weapon in situations of fear, frustration and anxiety when they learn to use it without fear, frustration or anxiety? I would think that not being able to handle a weapon under these emotions would actually provide a path to more unlawful deployments. Derbyshire Police are the first force trialling the virtual reality method, which is said to place police in realistic scenarios using virtual reality platforms. The force is currently bidding for 200 new taser devices over the next 2 years, which will be given to police on a voluntary rather than obligatory basis. And I'd suggest that anyone who actually asks for a taser should be refused. They say it's hoped that if the trials are successful, the programme will be rolled out across all police forces. Yeah, because what we really need is a bunch of kids who learned how to do things playing Call of Duty, thinking it's transferable to the real world. The realism does have to be seen to be believed, and the work the team have done to ensure the officers are able to use the same equipment they would when they are out on patrol has been absolutely outstanding, the Derbyshire Police Taser training manager said. I mean, yeah, it might look real, but when you know you are safe and have nothing to fear and that no one is going to actually attack you and hurt you, you are going to react vastly different from any real world situation. Performing open heart surgery on a virtual reality machine isn't going to help you when you have a real heart in your hands, and if your balls up, that patient's going to die. He said, with this we can give officers more time in scenarios, which means they are even better prepared should they need to use a taser in a critical moment, like taking someone down who calls them a name. Derbyshire's Chief Constable Peter Goodman has previously said he wants to increase the number of tasers in the county. Assistant Chief Constable Kem Mehmet said it's a fundamental duty of the police to protect the public from harm, yet are in so many cases being the cause of it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this worries me. The police won't be used to using it in real life situations with real people, with real fear and anxiety, which they need to learn to control. And yes, I know that virtual reality can be very realistic, but you're not going to kill someone or get sued by a virtual reality machine. So you still know that your mistakes will be forgiven. Another warning today. The other day it was over phone calls alleging that the police were investigating fraud and asking for bank details. Today, it's traffic wardens stealing bank cards. Again, this is a specific location, but due to the type of crime, it could happen anywhere. And although I know you're all pretty savvy, this should be passed on to your loved ones to help protect them. Now, the scam, which involves scammers pretending to be traffic wardens, is seeing people being told they are parked illegally and face huge fines unless they pay a small fee right away. The victims are told to call a number from a telephone box whilst inserting their bank card into a card reader and entering their PIN number. Once the PIN has been entered, the scammer runs off with the card and the PIN number, heads to the nearest cash machine and draws out as much money as they can. Posting on West Midlands Police's online alert system, West Midlands Now, police said this may sound like a far-fetched method, but this has happened on a number of occasions, especially to the older community, where they may not be able to react to such events as quickly as somebody younger could. If ever approached by someone stating they are official representatives of any organisation, whether it be council or police, do not hesitate to ask for identification. That will always be on hand. Please share this message with friends and family, especially those who are elderly or most vulnerable, to ensure they keep themselves safe. But also remember, as West Midlands Police failed to mention there, police or council officials are not allowed to take payment from you in the streets in any way. And this is something that's going to affect a lot of older people who still think a uniform should be trusted implicitly. So please do let your family know about this wherever you are and make sure you can help them stay safe from these arseholes. A doctor who was suspended and banned from treating patients for beating his wife has had his suspension lifted last week following a review hearing at Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service because he had felt left out of recent hand clapping for the NHS during lockdown. Poor boy. Dr. Abdul Bassett, 36, was suspended after he grabbed his wife by the throat and manhandled her during a string of arguments as she tried to adapt to a new life with him here in the UK. She also accused him of being a penny pincher who would only let her spend £10 a week on lunches. He would belittle, push and shove his wife during minor arguments, which led her to finally filing for divorce. He was heard screaming and shouting at his wife, and a fight broke out when her brother, also a doctor, intervened. He punched his wife in the face and on the ear, then hit her brother, which left her suffering swelling and bruising to her left eye. His wife said, "He told me that he did it because he wanted to break me down sociologically and emotionally, but at the same time he did say that he did love me." Oh, well, that's all right then. She added, "He would also grab my neck, squeeze it and ask, 'How does it feel?' I couldn't understand why he was doing this, and he just said, 'I am just seeing what it feels like.'" Dr. Bassett told a review hearing, "I see patients with mental health problems, and sometimes the patients are women who are or were subject to violence, and they will find it very upsetting if they come to know about the proven allegations regarding the doctor providing them care. I always treat them with respect and compassion in spite of my current issues and always make their safety my priority." But Miss Shirley Duckworth, lawyer for the General Medical Council, said it is not safe for him to return to unrestricted practice. Really? I'm surprised that anyone thinks it's safe for him to return to any kind of practice. Tribunal chairman Ms. Ijeoma Amabala, I think, told the Manchester hearing that Dr. Bassett had felt left out of the recent hand clapping for the NHS during lockdown. He said that Dr. Bassett had realised that it was his own misconduct that was the reason he couldn't work and wasn't included in this. He said he has sought to maintain his knowledge and skills, and the tribunal considered this to be indicative of a doctor who takes his profession seriously. Dr. Bassett told the tribunal he took full responsibility for his actions, and they were satisfied that his insight is genuine. I think it's pretty obvious that if a person can't respect their wife or husband, they're certainly not going to have respect for strangers. I think it's incredible that he hasn't had his arse handed to him on a plate by the General Medical Council altogether. PC Stuart Dixon. No, not this Dixon. That one's from Doc Green. This Dixon is from Northumbria Police and is facing a misconduct hearing after the weekend after he allegedly repeatedly accessed people's police files without a legitimate policing purpose. Investigators claim that PC Dixon accessed confidential police information over 30 times whilst on duty, breaching people's confidentiality in the process. It is alleged that he viewed the records of one person referred to as Mr. X on 9 different occasions. The breaches are said to have occurred over a period of more than 2 years between September 2016 and 2018. The one-day misconduct hearing will take place on Tuesday at the Police Force's Northern Communications Centre in Pontyland, and it has been said that it will be staged in private, because there's nothing quite like the transparency from the police. If the allegations are proven, PC Dixon could potentially lose his job if the panel rules he committed gross misconduct over these offences. A cyclist has been left fighting for their life after a collision on the A167 near Newton A Cliff in the early hours of this morning, the 21st of August 2019. The incident happened shortly after 12:30 a.m. when police from Durham Constabulary were responding to an emergency call and collided with the cyclist. The man was taken to James Cook University Hospital in Middlesbrough with injuries described as life-threatening. Police say his family have been informed and are being supported at this time, and that one officer was taken to Darlington Memorial Hospital with minor injuries. Now, how the hell can an occupant of a police van have injuries after hitting a push bike? Does anyone else think he's going for a claim, or is it just me? Durham Constabulary has referred the matter to the IOPC for them to think of a way out of it. A man who damaged his vehicle after driving over a raised drain in Walnut Tree Close near Guildford Station was told by British Transport Police that they wouldn't help him because they only deal with dead people. The driver claims he hit the drain, which caused oil to spill out onto the road, and went to seek help from the police, only to be told they wouldn't be offering him assistance. The driver, Nick Cooper, says he was driving to work on his first day back from a 2-week holiday at home when he heard a loud bang as he passed Guildford Station in Walnut Tree Close. He got out of his Audi A3 after stopping in a nearby junction and saw a trail of oil coming from underneath his car. Worried about other road users driving over the slippery hazard, he hurriedly went to the train station and asked for help from a British Transport Police officer, who he claims laughed and said, "I'm sorry mate, I only deal with dead bodies." Clearly showing the mentality of these cretins. He then allegedly told Mr. Cooper to stand in the road while he looks for something, and then handed him 2 traffic cones which he found in the station. British Transport Police have of course dismissed his version of events, with the spokesman saying a supervisor has discussed the incident with the officer concerned and is satisfied by the version of events given by the officer. The officer explained to the member of the public that he worked on the railway and offered to contact Surrey Police on his behalf, before then assisting with covering the drain. The gentleman is welcome to get in touch should he wish to discuss the matter further. Of course, because you can always trust a policeman's word over that of the public. Can't you? Big up and respect to every single one of the channel supporters, especially the channel Patreon supporters. I truly appreciate the help that you give. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. And let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police, film other officials. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend.
Good night, all.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.